everybody, and welcome to Criterion Watch. I believe this is our last episode for the season, and we have decided to do a movie back from 2001 called Ghost World. I am your host, the Moo Cow, otherwise known as Paulie Persunza, and joining me today is
Joe Turek.
Thank you very much for coming on board.
Another good flick you picked.
Another good flick. Ghost World is absolutely one of my favorite comedies of all time. One of my favorite movies of all time. It's just such a wonderful comedy, but at the same time it's also a stinging indictment of just the empty, shitty corporate America that exists out there, and how people who don't fit in have to sort of struggle to survive. And it's done with a lot of satire and sarcasm and snark and fun, and it's just a really interesting and fun film. And if you haven't seen it, you should definitely check it out. And I'm very pleased that Criterion decided to do this. It's a 4K restoration and everything. It's just a marvelous film. So, Joe, you had seen this before?
I saw it right out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
So, or actually, no, it wouldn't be right out of high school. A little bit after high school, because I guess 2001. I'm thinking years. You know, you start losing decades and stuff like that sometimes when you get older and stuff like that. So I guess I was out of
you too.
Yeah, I know, right? So I was out of high school a bit now. The more I think about it, but still, it was when it first came out. So really fresh at the time, but I was at a different stage in life than I am now. So seeing it from then to now gives a different sense of appreciation. And that's one of the things with some of these podcast stuff that we do, that we get to talk about stuff that we have seen maybe in the past and seeing at a different stage in life, and how it just resonates differently.
Yeah, so it would have been almost 20 years ago that this came out. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I lost a decade in there. I was thinking I was right out of high school, but actually I was a few years removed from high school, but I was still in that limbo state, if you will, that Ghost World sort of starts to meander into, or get delved into, and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, I saw it when it first came out too, because I mean this kind of came out of nowhere, and it had kind of an indie buzz going on, and I was familiar with Terry Zwick's previous movie about Crumb, about the artist, and so I thought, okay, well this will be interesting, and I thought I'd go check it out. I knew also that it had been based on the comic. I forgot the name of the guy who actually made the comic. David Klaus. And that's it was like a popular underground comic. And so again, I was kind of thinking that this was going to be a little bit more on sort of the Crumb side, sort of a documentary or nonfiction kind of film. So I was blown out of the water when I came in and saw this. And I mean, I guess once I came in and I saw that it was, you know, Thora Birch and Steve Buscemi was in there, I was like, okay, this is going to be cool. And wow, I was just so blown away, because in addition to just the plot and the story, the acting in this film is just absolutely marvelous. And in fact, pretty much all the production values, from the music through just the way everything is presented, the direction, it's just a great film.
I saw it, the reason I sought it out, I was working in a video store at the time, so
okay.
So obviously fit right into that sort of style. But
oh yeah.
I saw one of my favorite movies, if not my favorite, one of my favorites is American Beauty. So Thora Birch being in that sort of got me. I was interested to see what she was going to do as a follow-up, and this is actually a nice little tandem piece to that with her role.
And how is it that Thora Birch did not rocket to superstardom after those two films? She was absolutely marvelous in both of them. And I think the unfortunate reality is that her father became her manager after that, and supposedly he was not easy to work with, and there were problems in other films, and unfortunately it led to a lot of roadblocks, and it's a shame. And at the same time, we're also seeing the beginning of Scarlett Johansson's career, who does rocket to superstardom, and she's absolutely marvelous in this picture. So I guess we could take a moment and maybe talk about some of the characters in this. So basically there are these two high school girls. They're just graduating high school, and they are just full of piss and vinegar and snark. And they do not fit in with everybody else at all, nor do they care to. And now they're leaving their sort of insular high school world where everything's structured and you just have to pass a ridiculous art class or two in order to get through, even though Enid doesn't and has to go back, to now where they have to go into the real world. And how do you survive the real world? Well, the two of them have very, very different outlooks on it, even though they're very, very close and very similar. Enid seems a lot less ill-prepared. She's really still more interested in sort of hanging on to the parts of her childhood. Mm-hmm. She's not really ready to move on. Whereas Rebecca, though she's also kind of cold and sarcastic and snarky, she has a much better understanding and is ready to sort of put much of that aside in order to get a job and find a place to live and grow up and to do that sort of thing. But in the meantime, they're still going to have that little bit between graduation and finding the rest of your life by having some fun. And so they start, making fun of people and going to little diners and making fun of the waiter and just being the Satanists. And, and they eventually bump into a character by the name of Seymour, played wonderfully by Steve Buscemi, who is this sort of old music collector nerd who is at a like a little swap meet or a little
like a garage sale almost.
Yeah, garage sale, and he's got a bunch of old records there, and Enid is pretending to be interested even though she's really not, and Rebecca's kind of laughing and she's kicking her, be quiet, because she thinks it's fun to cock snooks at the poor loser. And
it's not that they already didn't jab at him with that prank call
I
thing.
know,
So
and it turns out...
Which was cold, and seeing Buscemi, how pissed off he was in the car and stuff like that, because it just shows that character. I mean, I was really surprised with how deep Seymour's character ended up being.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah.
Because it's like you're thinking it's about the two girls, and then it's like, but Seymour actually is
well,
very...
I think the thing is that Enid comes to recognize a lot of him in her.
Yeah.
Whereas Rebecca, and I think they both do, but I think Enid welcomes it, and I think Rebecca does not, which I think is, again, the sort of thing. I think Rebecca looks at him and says, I don't want to be like that.
Yeah, it's like I want to, in her eyes, grow up and be mature.
Be successful.
Yeah, successful and stuff. Whereas Enid's still in that observing the ills of society, if you will.
Oh yeah,
and recognizing different things, which is sort of where we were at that point, right out of high school and stuff like that.
Oh sure. And there are a lot of ills, as the movie is clear to point out. It's just you go from high school and right into this sort of fake corporate shitty world full of fake corporate shitty music and people and things, and you've got to fit in. You've got to find your place and try to survive, and that is not very easy for a lot of people. It wasn't easy for me.
It wasn't for me either. And we talked about the time difference, how I thought I saw it right out of high school. That 10 years or so was that area in life that I was sort of just, I won't say stuck, but just trying to find myself. And working at the video store, and I relate to a lot of the stuff that was going on there. They had that mock scene with the 8.5 versus 9.5 weeks.
I know, that was so
insane.
Funny. I have been there and seen things like that.
But it's like seeing how they were, and that's right about the point that I was getting out of that stage of life and starting to transition out of the retail world, if you will, and going into what is perceived as a real job. And just seeing how they reacted to it, I sort of saw myself in it. But being this movie was about two girls too, which was kind of cool that it was, because it showed, and they were of real age too, so it wasn't like almost a 30-year-old playing an 18-year-old kid out of high school and stuff like that. They were 16 and 18 when they made this, respectively.
Sure.
So this really felt real.
Absolutely. And there are just some wonderful, wonderful scenes in there that really encapsulate these characters too. When they're in the beginning, when they're at the high school dance, and they're just too cool for school, and they don't really want to be involved. But one of the friends comes up and starts chatting with them, And they're like, so what are you going to do when you grow up? And he's like, oh, you know, I'm going to go to college and I'm going to major in business administration. And Enid just drags her friend away and says, yeah, that's the sort of thing we're trying to avoid. And I'm like, yes, Enid for the win. It was so funny. And then, of course, you know, she does have to find a job. I mean, reality comes crashing in pretty hard on her. And she gets this McJob at a movie theater where the manager's just an asshole and, you know, trying to force her to upsell to customers, which is a ridiculous notion that only some corporate, you know, bean counter is going to think about and just force you to do all this crap. And then she's like, you know, medium. Oh, sir. Let me explain to you how a medium is for suckers who don't understand the value of $1.
And she says, since I want to be your true friend and stuff like that, yeah. And then the other lady was about the I'm gonna give you basically like liquid death on top of your popcorn. And Zwigoff did really good with the sound on this because I mean he did it. It was like it was perfect.
It was so funny. And you know, she just experiences what I guess everybody has to go through. And of course, she gets her little butt fired and she has to go back to her friend who doesn't find this amusing at all and saying, you know, what kind of idiot gets themselves fired on the first day? We're supposed to get an apartment together. How are we going to do this if you keep getting yourself fired? And poor Enid's trying. She just doesn't fit in. And the more the movie progresses, the more she ends up starting to pull away from her friend and towards Seymour, who's also this sort of reject from society who hasn't really figured out his thing and doesn't even like his thing that he's found it. He doesn't even like all the collector stuff that he's done.
Yeah, he's doing it just to do it, I guess, just to exist or whatnot. Whether it's the records or the I don't say commercial art or whatever it was, the commercial stuff and all, where it was the Cook's
The chicken.
Coons
Coons Chicken Inn turning into Cook's Chicken.
Yeah.
There was a Coons
I
Chicken
thought
Inn.
I read something.
Oh
about
yeah,
too.
that was real. Now it didn't become Cook's Chicken, but yeah, it was there in the 20s and 30s, believe it or not.
But I like how they used that in the art class because it really showed Enid's character, how she was trying to shift to fit in the art class because the one girl was using all the female analogies and stuff like that about right to choose and all this stuff. And then Ileana Douglas, which was really good in the very small role in this too, how she was like, oh yeah, because now it's like this, and so Enid takes this and she spins it in a way that would help her fit into that, if you will, but that sort of blows up down the road.
Yeah. But I mean, she recognizes the phoniness in that crap too, because I mean, we've all been in those art classes where you've got, you know, the super aggressive, progressive person, and you've got the other guy, I forget his name, who's just like, he drew a picture of a guy getting hit over the head with a hammer, and he's like, it's the mutilator, he kills people, and she's like, oh, okay, that's art too, sort of.
Yeah, she's like that's okay. That's art, but the hangers as a woman and all that stuff.
Oh my God, it was
crafted
just so
together.
funny.
But I guess Zwigoff probably has some relation with art because I mean he did that movie Art School Confidential a few years after that, obviously to lesser esteem and in a critical sense, which is I guess is sort of. Who cares when it comes to what their way they talk about stuff in Ghost World? It's like, I mean, it's beauty's in the eye of the beholder, basically. And this has that beauty.
Yeah, absolutely. I just love how they react to the world that they've been thrust into. You know, at one point they're at some kind of club and Rebecca's trying to convince Enid, you know, why don't we just relax and maybe we can find some guys or something and maybe hang out. And this group of guys come by, these like 20-something bros, and they're like, hey, you want to hear some reggae? And Enid's like, and Rebecca's like, yeah, okay. They're all a bunch of freaking losers. It's just so funny. And the thing is that you get to this point, and then the movie kind of pulls its rug out from under you because it's funny and everything, but you know, as the movie progresses, there has to be something has to happen for Enid, and it doesn't, and all the wheels just completely come off, and you end up feeling really, really bad because she just makes a whole bunch of bad decisions that really come back and haunt her, and it's a very, very poignant and sad ending.
Yeah. It's like all the different people in her life are trying to move forward, whether it's her dad's trying to help her in different ways. Bob Balaban, another
Great performance.
yeah, about trying to help a little bit, help her grow up, if you will. Then Rebecca's trying to grow up. Seymour's actually getting into a relationship with the girl that Eden helps reunite him with, basically. So it's like all these people are moving forward in their life, and she sort of gets stuck. And then she has the potential to go to art thing, but then that gets ripped out from under her because of the racial
Right.
thing and how people
Right.
are so have to be so politically correct on things.
And the thing is, even with Seymour's new girlfriend, you know, he doesn't even really like her that much. I mean, I think he recognizes her as sort of his path
Yeah.
to going back and fitting into society by having a girlfriend, and not only a girlfriend, but one who is, you know, a little bit more mainstream and more interested in the regular things. And she buys him with a pair of jeans.
Yeah,
or
yeah.
something.
He goes from khakis to jeans, which completely disrupts Enid's thoughts because she's just like, whoa, like what's happened here and stuff like that.
It's so funny, you know. There's that one scene where they're in there and you know, in this one club, and everybody's there to hear, you know, Blues Hammer, who's this shitty, fake white band, like they have any fucking concept of picking cotton. And you know, but before he was there to watch the actual, you know, the I forget the name of the artist, the older black guy who's an actual real blues musician, and nobody's even paying attention to him. He's like. And he has that great remark where he says, you know, I don't understand 95% or 99% of humanity. Dude, I am right there with you.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm the moo cow, come on. How well did that go over in society? Not very well. But, you know, I imagine Terry Zwigoff and David Clowes and all these sort of artists, folk, and individuals have had to experience this in their lives. You know, you don't fit into the way the world is, so you have to negotiate your way. And hopefully, you're the kind of person who manages to find something that will allow you to be yourself and while still be able to make a paycheck and have the regular things that we're all supposed to want in life.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things I completely forgot that Terry Zwigoff was the director of this, and I was like, oh wait, he directs one of the comedies I absolutely love from the early 2000s, Bad Santa. I don't know how you feel about that, but that movie deals a lot with isolation and I mean a whole different, obviously, elements than Ghost World. But I saw them. The roommate, Seymour's roommate, was in Bad Santa, had a quick cameo too. But just Bad Santa holds a kind of a fun place in me with Christmas because it's so. Billy Bob Thornton was just great in that. But Zwigoff shifted from Ghost World to Bad Santa, and these were his first two fiction features. Like I think you were saying at sort of the beginning. With,
Yeah.
he did a couple documentaries on Crumb, and there was one other one too.
And in a way, Zwigoff is also sort of graduating from, you know, sort of doing the thing that you love to have to do something. I mean, you know, Bad Santa was okay. It's more of a popular commercial sort of thing.
Absolutely.
And again, you have to pay the bills, and that's one of the lessons in life that you have to learn. And you know, there's a level of being forced to grow up in this film, but to me it's more about fitting in. And you know, it's the way life is. I mean, there's a you know, a round hole, and you don't want to be a square peg. I mean, you can be. I mean, I've been a square peg my whole life. But it comes at a cost, and sometimes that cost is okay, and sometimes it's too much. And there are plenty of people who have not made it in society, or have not fit in, who have not been able to make the transition from the way they were in their youth to making it in adulthood. It's not easy, and there are, you know, hundreds of Hollywood films out there that cover this sort of topic, all the way back to, say, you know, God, my brain doesn't. American Graffiti is probably the best known example of that, and certainly all the '80s with the John Hughes films.
Yeah. Well,
and
it's kind of funny you mentioned the '80s and John Hughes films too, because I don't think it was John Hughes itself, but I mean actually it was a Bret Easton Ellis novel. But I watched Less Than Zero like a week or two ago the first time, and that deals with the graduation, right after graduation, and where their lives go too. So seeing that story, obviously, then is very dramatic in a different sense, and then Ghost World, a different take on it 15, 20 years later, and stuff like that, and it's just seeing how people can be isolated, how they have to deal with that as you try to fit into that round peg square square that
Right.
analogy you was using.
What I love is the fact that they're not doing it happily. They're doing it with snark and piss and vinegar, and there's definitely a whole level of sort of punk attitude,
Yeah.
and it's just wonderful.
And change your hair to green and
Right.
And-
One of the great things about the Criterion version of this is that it comes with not only this really cool booklet, which sort of has all kinds of, there's like an essay in there and all kinds of original drawings, like some of the really cool drawings are in there. I don't know if you wanted to check that out. But it also comes with this little comic in here that David Clowes drew, and there's this wonderful little thing in here where, let's see, I don't remember which one it is. Maybe it's in that one. But basically, I think it was some posters.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, there's the Enid doll. That's super adorable. But yeah, there was a couple of posters in here that they either didn't use or were going to use for the promotion of the film. Oh yeah, and I love these too. So there's one that says, I can barely read that.
If you can't get a life, get an attitude.
If you can't get a life, get an attitude, which
yeah.
is perfect for them. And then let's see, what was the other one?
Life is
Oh
for
yeah,
losers.
life is for losers. That's like the perfect thing that I can totally see Enid saying. And my heart goes out to Enid. She's absolutely wonderful. She doesn't fit in. She may never fit in. And the thing is, at the end of the film, we don't really know what's going to happen to her. We really don't. There's this one guy, I forget his name, but he's this sort of lost soul who's been sitting at a bus stop. Norman.
Yes.
Norman. And he either doesn't know or doesn't care that the bus no longer stops there. He goes there and sits every day, and he's kind of emblematic of all of these sort of lost souls that are in the film. And towards the end, when Enid's whole world's been turned upside down, even that changes because a bus finally pulls up and he gets onto the bus and leaves. But in a way, I mean, it's also kind of like a bit of hope for her, and she ends up getting on the bus herself, going towards whatever her future's going to be. And it may work for her, may not. We will never know.
But it showed with Norman getting on the bus, whether in whatever way, and it seemed like each one of them was going into a path they were going to, I'll say, be all right, but they were going to move forward with whatever their existences respectively were going to be.
And one of the other scenes right before that it's also pretty heartbreaking is the last scene with Rebecca and Enid, where they're sitting on the bench and she's holding her hands because they finally made some kind of reconciliation, and she's telling her, "I'm leaving," and you get the impression that neither one of them know what's going to happen to her, and Rebecca says, "Call me," and then she gets up and leaves, and it's at that moment that she realized Rebecca's going to be okay. She has made the transition.
Yeah.
She's okay with it, and she knows that Enid has not and may not ever. But if you do manage to get it, call me. I still value the relationship.
I think something just came to mind on that is that sort of bookends the beginning. Now, this was aside, the one girl that just was like, "Call me, let's get together after all this stuff."
Yeah.
And
Melora.
yeah, and it's like it bookends the beginning with this at the end and stuff like that. So it was just, but you saw Rebecca did move forward, and she was going to move forward, and she was going to be all right. But I took it that they were all going to be all right, but there was a very open-ended ending to where an interpretation could be had, because you never know what people. I mean, some people had trouble fitting into that 9 to 5 thing, and I mean, it's like I work at a computer most of the day and stuff like that. And some people are like, no, I have to be out and doing whatever and stuff like that. So it's like you got to find whatever fits you for, one, survival, and two, for emotional and spiritual connections.
Right. And the thing is that Terry Zwigoff wisely, in my opinion, avoided closure in this film. He left it ambiguous and open-ended, and it makes you, value the characters even more. Whereas, a lot of typical Hollywood films will just tack on this pat ending, just to sort of, give it the happy ending, blah, 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 blah. But it's funny because in the little comic that's included, it's addressed, where he says, whatever happened to Enid and Rebecca, and there are all these sort of little variations of what could happen, to them until finally the characters are like, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this? Just leave us alone." And then the comic just ends, which I thought is perfect.
Yes.
It's so like those two characters. It's really adorable.
I'm
So
glad that Zwigoff took this ending versus the stereotypical Hollywood ending.
Absolutely.
With closure. I've just seen pictures of Terry Zwigoff, but he seems to, physically, he looked like he would resemble Seymour. And
I was going to
I'm
say,
thinking
yeah.
there might be something there that might be
Yeah.
who he really is in some ways. And I know we touched a little bit on Seymour's character, but Steve Buscemi was just amazing.
Fabulous, absolutely fabulous. I mean, he's good in pretty much everything, but he just really got his hooks into this character, and just you can't help but feel sorry for this guy too. And yet he gives him a very layered, performance. I mean, you see him at his worst too, where
Yeah.
he's extremely snarky against people, and he has no patience, like for the people with the kids trying to cross the highway, waiting for them. Why don't you just have more kids? God damn it! I'm the same. I'm completely guilty. But you can't. You're not allowed to say that kind of stuff. Though much of you feel it, and that's the other thing. All these characters, that's the big difference between, Seymour and Enid and even Rebecca, is that they will say the things that they think. They don't bother with a social filter. Whereas most people, in order to fit in, you sort of have to.
Yeah.
Can't just.
Got to play the game.
Got to play the game.
Yeah.
They don't want to play the game, and thank God that Terry Zwigoff made this movie about people who don't want to play the game or are forced to play the game and won't do it happily.
Yeah. Interesting also that, I was talking about how, where I was in that point of life, but this movie seemed almost like a product of the 90s of transitioning into 2000s, so maybe there was something there, and then obviously this was right before all the 9/11 happened, so it was a different world then too, but I think that the whole dynamics of the characters, it really resonated in such a way that was so believable, and just absolutely a lot better received at this point in life than I did when it first came out.
Oh, so you're saying you liked it more now
Oh,
than when
absolutely.
you first saw it?
Yeah, when I first saw it, I was like,
Okay.
okay, yeah, it's good, but I couldn't appreciate it for where I was, because I was basically sort of in that mode, if you will, and it's like sort of like how they are in Clerks, another example, and just they're just sort of commenting on life and stuff like that, but it's like, but there's so much more, and that's where in Ghost World you sort of take a step back, and Zwigoff looks at not just what he's observing and what he sees as true issues in society, but then it's like, how are they being resonated within somebody who's really only 16 or 18 years old, and playing them. So I just think overall, just really good film.
Well, for me, I saw it in my early 30s when it first came out, so I had been totally fed up with having the real job and the real world and all that kind of shit. And fortunately, I had found archaeology, a subject that I had looked at and investigated while in college, but never really considered as a sort of actual career, because who the hell is an archaeologist? Nobody. I mean, very few people. But the opportunity came, and I pursued it, and I said, man, this is really the life for me. If I can stick with this, I mean, you have to make a lot of sacrifices, because it's not the kind of job that's always going to be there 24/7. It's not a corporate kind of job, and it's someplace where I can be me. I mean, you talk to Gary and some of my other friends, and they're like, oh yeah, this is the weird cow guy who was singing strange songs and dressing weird and doing crazy shit and jokes and all that, at the site. And I could do that. I could do that and be myself. You can't generally do that and work for a bank or work for some company that's just out there trying to sell people shit that they don't really need in order to make a profit. I mean, it's just soul crushing. But I'm one of the lucky ones. I managed to find a career and a job that keeps me afloat and allows me to be me, and a lot of people can't do that. And it's a shame. And so this movie really is a sort of love song for those of you out there who both are able to make that transition, like Rebecca, and those who were not able to make that, or at least may not be able to make that transition, like Enid.
Yeah. What else was on the Criterion? I saw the books. Is there like commentaries? And stuff like that?
Yeah, there's all kinds of extras on there. I didn't bring my reading glasses with me.
It's really it doesn't really
It's
talk
small.
about it in there. So yeah, so
I think on the black part.
Yeah, it just says it's gathered. It just talks about the Criterion collection in general, not about this one specifically. So, but for the movie itself, I know they do great work in the restoration
Oh, yeah.
and stuff like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah.
just definitely worth getting, and definitely fitting into this series.
And I'm almost positive there's at least a commentary track in there because I've heard commentary from it before.
Yeah,
It's been a while, but when I first bought the Blu-ray, it was one of the first things I did was put it on with the commentary because it's just.
yeah, it says
really
newly
good.
restored 4K. Okay, actually, it's here. 4K digital transfer supervised by Zwigoff. Let's see here. The co-writer, there's commentary from the co-writers and stuff like that. Then there's new interviews with them. That'd be actually interesting to see with Thora Birch, Scarlett Johansson, and
Oh,
Indiana
that's
Douglas.
cool. Yeah.
Extended excerpt from 1965 film. Interesting. That's the opening music intro.
Oh,
which was really good.
Yeah, that's
so
great.
that's worth it. Deleted scenes. That'd actually be worth seeing because seeing what those could be all about. And then there's an essay by critic Howard Hampton talking about the soundtrack and everything. Which the soundtrack was really good too.
Fabulous. Absolutely
Lots of good
fabulous.
music in there that I'm not privy to knowing, and it's not a genre that I seek out. But
Skip James, baby.
But it definitely fit this, and you could tell that there was a love for that. And they really wanted to fit that in here.
I love when they go to that fake 50s diner and the very first thing they're sitting there and there's like this rap music playing on it and she's
Yeah.
who can forget this great hit from the 50s? Oh my God, it was so funny. So yeah, I mean, the way the biting satire on just the the shitty fake corporate world out there that these poor souls have to swim in is just amazing. It's just so funny and so bitter and so wonderful. I would definitely seek this one out. This is not your regular teen romance kind of comedy, which is why what I really love about it. So
and I think in Criterion, when I was thinking that just in general before I started doing some of these with you, I was thinking like it'd be just the more prestigious, artsy, high-end films of the past and stuff like that. But it just shows that there's movies even in more recent generations, our generation, that does fit into this. And,
sure.
Definitely works in this.
High quality, I think, is what they're looking for in movies that are worth preserving.
Yeah, and I know this won some awards. I believe it was up for I think it was up for Golden Globes and Oscars and stuff like that. A couple here or there for supporting actor, and obviously the screenplay based off the comics and stuff like that. It's just,
I tell you, Thora Birch should have become a superstar. She really should have. Just the same level, I would say, as Scarlett Johansson. And hey, I'm a giant Scarlett Johansson fan. I think she's a marvelous actress. And this is a perfect example of her early work, and she does such a really good job. And to have Steve Buscemi in there, the three of them together is just amazing.
yeah.
So,
well, I guess Scarlett Johansson does do, and she balances work over her career too. She does the big Marvel movies, obviously, but she also does some of the more under the radar films, the Under the Skin, and different stuff like that. So
I love that movie.
I know. So yeah, there is definitely and this is probably one of the first things that she did.
I know, and she does it with such a great character because in the essay, the guy talks about how they don't really utilize their sexuality in this film at all. These characters, they're not interested in that. They're like, to them, boobs are not something to show off in order to attract men. There are these baggages that they have to drag with them and deal with.
Function in a later time.
Right, or just it's just an annoyance that they have to put up with, and that just encapsulates their attitude towards pretty much everything. And both actresses really latched onto that. And you're right, it's an amazing moment where Thora Birch was on a rocket ship going up, and she's working with Scarlett Johansson, who's the second banana in this film. And then as it turns out, it's the opposite these days, and now Scarlett Johansson's the superstar.
Yeah, she's probably top 2 or 3 of the female stars in Hollywood probably right now. But another thing with this is the the wardrobe that they used throughout it. I mean,
Oh,
the
yeah.
way they
That's
used
cool.
her were some of the different colors when she colored her hair, or whether she was trying to fit into different.
And her glasses. I loved her glasses.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and then they had Scarlett Johansson was more of a calm down approach of stuff, and then Buscemi's character was just sort of a
A schlub.
yeah. There you go. There you
Yeah,
go.
ridiculous
So
schlub.
yeah, it's just everything. Everything about this was just spot on.
Hmm. I agree. I agree. I'm not sure what else we could say about it. Love the film, absolutely. If you can get your hands, your hooves on the Blu-ray Criterion version, you definitely need to do that. It's full of extra goodies. It looks beautiful. It sounds beautiful. And if you love your teenage coming-of-age movies with a big ol' helping of snark and sarcasm, this is going to be your film. Trust
Yeah,
me.
yeah. It's a bit different than the John Hughes stuff, but
Definitely,
just
definitely.
a little bit.
A lot more of my cup of tea, and I'm so glad. And it's in my top 20 movies of all time that I
Wow.
absolutely love.
There you go. Well,
All right.
yeah. So it's in one of your top 20. So Thora Birch is in your top 20, and she's in my top 20 easily too. And I mean,
Absolutely.
I'm not sure where this would resonate long term for me. I mean, I have to let time sit on that a little bit more. But obviously, it's a great film. Really, definitely worth checking out.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Also, want to check out more of her stuff, her work now too. Hopefully, I haven't really looked to see what she's been up to in recent years. I haven't seen anything.
She's done some more indie-related kinds of stuff. You know, I mean, maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. It all kind of depends on how you look at it. I know she's had some trouble
I thought I saw her in
securing some other
something a few
things.
years ago, but it doesn't really.
But it doesn't take away from the fact that she's a marvelous,
Yeah.
marvelous
Great
actress.
1-2 punch in the.
Oh yeah, and the two of them together,
Oh, yeah.
fabulous.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thank you very, very much for joining us for this edition of Criterion Watch. Please tune in next season where we will find yet another really, really cool movie to dig up that's on the Criterion list, and we will be back. So we will see you next time. See ya.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.